I'm Gary Johnson. I'm the host and executive producer of the Thought Brothers podcast. I'm also the host of Calculations Talk Show. The show that you're about to see is a first for us, combining two formats, but also having two great guests. This is the first time I've had a Republican or a known Republican where we talked about this with regard to politics on the show. Raynard Jackson, Republican strategist and president of Raynard Jackson and Associates. We also had Ms. Jackie Jones, the Dean of Communications at Morgan State University and a veteran newswoman herself. Take a look at the show. Hindsight being 2020, I think the next time we do a show like this, we need some real-time fact-checking because the statements and claims were flying fast and furious on both sides. Other than that, the show met my expectations, but you be the judge. Enjoy the show.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
Welcome to this special edition of Calculations, the talk show, and the Thought Brothers, and our special guests, Raynard Jackson, who will tell you about himself, and Ms. Jackie Jones. Raynard, I want to start with you. Give us a little bit of background before we kick it off.
All right. Thanks so much, Gary, for having me on. It's been a long time. Heck, I've known Gary forever, and but good to reconnect. But Raynard Jackson, out of St. Louis, originally live in D.C. now. I was brought up here years ago. I don't think Gary was even born when I was brought up here by Old Man Bush. I used to work for, well, I call him Old Man Bush, President 41. So I worked with him, which is how I ended up here in D.C. And after we left the White House, decided to stay up here, open up my own lobby shop, which I've been doing ever since, and work on a lot of political campaigns around the country and throughout the world, especially over in Africa. And then we also represent a lot of athletes in the NBA, NFL, Hollywood, and a lot of people ask me, am I their agent? I say no unequivocally. I'm not their agent. An agent helps them make a living. I help them make a life. And and for your audience, Gary, who may be, yes, I am a very, very, very big Trump supporter. I was MAGA before Trump became MAGA. I always joke with him about that. And so I'll end it with there, and we can get into it during the discussion, any deeper things about my background.
Okay, you said you were there with Old Man Bush. I was a registered Democrat working in the Reagan administration. So I'm not, I got you. We down there.
Yeah, we're going to take your citizenship from you. Democrat, man.
All right, we just getting ready to get started. Jackie Jones, please introduce yourself.
All right, I'm a native Washingtonian. I remember when Washingtonians got the vote for president in 1964. The 23rd Amendment was ratified in 1961, and the first election my folks could vote in was Johnson Goldwater, and that was a real intense time, and a lot of folks. But it also was a celebratory time in DC. I remember that because my folks got dressed up like they were going to church to go vote. It was such a big deal. I became a journalist and have been working in the field for over 40 years, and I am currently the Dean of the School of Global Journalism and Communication at Morgan State University. A longtime NABJ member and served on the national board for a while. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to have you all answer, and then let the Thought Brothers roll in. And the first question I'm going to ask to you, Raynard, I think I know the answer to this. Would you have invited Donald Trump to speak at the NABJ?
Well, God, I think Gary, I forgot to send you my column, Jackie. I'll make sure you
Oh,
get a copy.
that's how we got that's
That's
how
how we okay. Yeah,
I,
make
I
sure I get Jackie that column. Jackie, been a member of NABJ forever, and I chew a new one in them any chance I get because I think NABJ is a total disappointment. And so what I wrote in my column 2 weeks ago was yes, I thought that and I don't know the new president out of North Carolina, but yes, he should have invited Trump. I know all the questioners on the panel, and Rachel Scott is a buffoon, and she made a fool of herself. And what I'm amazed at in the black community, no one talks about what happened in ABJ. That was Trump's version of Sister Soldier going back to 1982, Bill Clinton, when he spoke at Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push, and Sister Soldier, of course, a gangster rapper, radical feminist back in the day. And Bill Clinton used that occasion to basically slap Jesse Jackson at his own event and say, hey, to white Democrats, I'm not down with all this stuff. So I came to Jesse's house to let you know I'm not down with all this stuff. So Trump did that at NABJ and put it on steroids because there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes that to this day NABJ has not revealed to the public. For example, they tried to change the rules of the terms of the debate when Trump got there. And that was what the delay had nothing. They had some equipment failure. That was a minor issue. But the big sticking point was all of a sudden NABJ was pressed by people like April Ryan and other radical liberal members of NABJ. They wanted, now check this out. You got a former president and you're going to tell him, we're going to put somebody on stage and fact check you in real time. And it's like, okay, are you doing that for Harris? No. Did you do that for Joe Biden? No. Did you do that for Hillary Clinton? And I don't want to hear that anything about, well, but Trump lied. They all lie. So let's get that straight. But for them to change the rules in real time, Trump was about to walk out of the hotel and they begged him to stay. And that's when he walked on stage. And so as opposed to Rachel Scott asking the first question, said, Mr. President, obviously we all saw that tragic incident that you went through 2 weeks ago. How's your health? How's your family? And I thought the question was okay. I didn't have a problem with the question. I had a problem with her tone, and that's not the way you lead off an event, asking a question wrapped up in an opinion. And so, yeah, I thought it was appropriate. And I saw nothing wrong with how Trump spanked her and smacked her down.
all right, Jackie.
All right, so a couple of things. The campaign was already aware of the fact-checking issue. They did not oppose it until they got on the scene. There were no technical difficulties. It was the Trump campaign pushing back against the real-time fact-checking. Once things got rolling, I think that there are a couple of areas where might even agree a little bit with Raynard, but the bottom line is Trump was who he is. He came to follow his script, which he did, and he did leave early. He threatened to leave early, or threatened not to go on at all. But in the middle of the conversation, he got upset and walked out. So he did not spend the entire scheduled time on stage. Furthermore, it is routine for NABJ to invite the major party candidates to the convention to speak. So there's nothing unusual about that. There are people who felt some kind of way about it emotionally, but it wasn't unusual on our part. Kamala Harris was invited. Her campaign said that she could not come in person. NABJ said they wanted to send a surrogate, and they said, no, we want the candidate. And then there was some discussion after the fact of whether they would make an accommodation for her. But at the end of the day, that didn't happen. I think that the idea of having 3 broadcasters conducted interviews, all women, no men, and I think there should have been a range of experience because all three are relatively young in the grand scheme of things. I think you've got to have some people who have covered the White House, who have some institutional memory and are focused on more specific issues. And I think to that extent, the interviews did not go as well as they should have. And I think that NABJ could have done a better job of planning that out. You don't invite someone to your home and let them rearrange your furniture. And so I think
you also don't be rude to them either, Jackie.
Well, that's true. But, you know, I think that there's a lot of anticipation in dealing with Trump because he's so bombastic. He's so quick to be rude. And so the pushback began from the start. And that's definitely, I think, a rookie mistake. Someone who was more seasoned would have started that conversation off differently. So there was enough blame to go around.
I agree.
But
I agree.
I think that you know, we had no choice. Our tradition is to invite the members of the major party to come and speak. And sometimes they accept us, sometimes they don't. One year, George W. Bush, we were in Seattle, I think there was a unity convention, yep. Turned us down and then showed up at the hotel and proceeded to conduct an impromptu news conference in the hotel's atrium.
Guess who was behind that? Guess who was behind that?
You.
Every now and then they listen to me.
Yeah, so you know that those things happen and you have to be prepared for that. And I think that was the other mistake. And I think that you probably, as a longtime NABJ member, know that every president has something during his or her administration that kind of blows up on them. And I think that this is Ken Lemon's. And maybe in some ways it's good that he got it out the way early instead of later in his term. But the bottom line is that they should have better anticipated what was likely to happen, what their response was going to be, and set the table a little better going forward.
Let me ask you this, Jackie, and excuse me, Gary, I know this is your show, but like I said, Jackie, I'm very critical of NABJ, and the reason I joined decades ago, because when I would write critical columns, they would just blow me off, say, oh, he's not even a member. So ever since that point, I took out a membership, so you had to take me seriously since I'm a dues paying member. But I've helped a lot of Black reporters, whether they work for mainstream organizations or Black media outlets. And here's the problem they have. When they call and the press secretary, whether it's the senator, congressman, governor, president, when they find out it's a Black reporter, most Republicans' default position is not to return their call or to take forever to return the call. And the reason why is they assume, and I think it's a well-deserved assumption, that if you're Black, it's going to be a hit piece, and therefore they're hesitant to call. I've had to intervene many times with Black journalists on that. So I think NABJ, the organization, has done itself a disservice by being perceived as a vestige of the Democratic Party, which I think is very much based on reality, not just perception.
I think that's true in a lot of ways across the board, not just in politics, that Black reporters are perceived a certain way. They certainly have to fight to get opportunities. And I think that there is that kind of dance that you do with sources. And a lot of times it's merited that you're going to find, as a Republican, you would find some resistance from the media because they know that they're going to get the pushback before they even get a chance to ask a question. So, you know, it's a chicken egg conversation. So I wouldn't say that you know, Republicans are innocent parties in this process. You know, they got some skin in this game too.
Okay. Right. Let me get the fellas in. No, let me get the fellas in. Bill Spivey, come on.
Raynard, let me ask you a question. What qualities do you see in Donald Trump that you are impressed with?
Oh, wow. You got that much time, Bill?
Well, you know, you don't have to make it a litany of things. I just like to hear a few of them.
Well, see, Trump is an interesting figure.
I agree with that.
People in today's time, everything has to be packaged in a 10-second soundbite versus looking at him in his totality. Yeah, there are some quirks about Trump I do not like when he starts going off message and getting into crowd size and all, that drives me crazy. But let me tell you a couple things that the general public doesn't know about Trump, and I keep fighting these guys to talk about some of these issues. I have videotaping. You can go on C-SPAN for this, find it yourself. Jesse Jackson named Donald Trump Man of the Year for Rainbow Push. Donald Trump gave Jesse Jackson free office space on Wall Street, prime real estate. When Al Sharpton couldn't meet his payroll, Trump reached in his pocket. And I've been challenging Sharpton publicly and privately, give the money back. If you think Trump is such a racist, give that money back. Then what I find the most interesting thing about him is back in 1990, Mar-a-Lago, West Palm Beach, there were two private clubs there in Palm Beach that had a stated policy of not admitting Jews and blacks. Trump, with no dog in the fight, filed two lawsuits against both of those clubs. One, and now blacks and Jews are admitted to that club. Donald Trump had no gain to be had for doing that. And so, final thing is, isn't it amazing that people always ask me, how can you get behind Trump? The better question, in my view, is what have we as the voting population done to necessitate the creation and the arrival of a Donald Trump? Neither party to this day are addressing the concerns of the average voter, whether you're liberal or conservative, the economy, illegal immigration, all these foreign wars. Trump comes along as a billionaire and connects with the average voter. Now, you could disagree with some of his policies, but he connected with them like no other person I've seen in my lifetime. That's what I like about Trump. He can speak the language of the average citizen.
And he also changed his stripes. He was a Democrat. He supported Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
He was a very different man until he decided that he was going to become Republican and change his views on a whole slew of issues, including right to choose and a lot of other social policy issues. So he's a man of convenience. I think that he is actually for himself primarily, and then let the chips fall where they may. I don't think that he has a real sense of governing. I don't think that he has a real vested interest in Americans. He talks bad about Americans behind their backs. Or I shouldn't say behind their backs because everything's leaked out. But, he's crude and he is not what he appears to be. His financial status is in question. I lived in New York when he was running down Atlantic City. I watched him when he was wrongfully accusing those young men in the Central Park Five, and even called for their execution before they even were convicted. And so anybody who's watched how he's managed money, what he's done, how many times has he filed for bankruptcy? How many times has he failed to pay bills? All the other things that have happened to him recently, I don't see much to like.
But Jackie, but you will, maybe you won't, but I talk to a lot of regular Black folks, especially from the Boulay, talented tent, all the way to Raheem and Pookie and them. And if they're being honest with me, almost without exception, most of them will say they had a better quality of life under the 4 years of Trump versus what we're going through now.
See, Maynard, a lot of that stuff you're talking about, I have talked to some of these Raheems and Shaquims and those type of people. A lot of them were hoodwinked, especially a lot of people in the ghetto, when they got those checks when Trump was in office. If you remember, he gave them checks, I think, for $600-700. He held the checks up for over a month because he did not want the Treasury's secretary name on the checks. which is normally on any government check. He wanted his name on the check. A lot of people who are not that smart thought that they got the money from Trump. But I'm gonna just say a few things. All of the stuff that you mentioned about what Trump did, all of that stuff was before he took his cloak off or his mask off. You talked about 1990s. You talked about 2000s. There's a couple of things about Donald Trump that will never in life set well with me. Any man who would take a mother and a child and separate the two of them, which he did while he was in the White House.
Obama did the same thing.
Well, I'm talking about Donald Trump.
Oh, no, but
okay?
no, Bill,
okay. That's the way Republicans do. Whenever you start hammering on one of them, they go back and pull some stuff about Obama or whatever.
Those kids in cages, those photos were from Obama. The media lied and said it was under Trump. Those photos were from Obama's day, and that's been proven.
He took kids from their parents with no plans for reconciliation. Some of these kids have never even today been able to be put back with their parents. And the last thing I'll say is, if someone is a mentor, is Hitler and the alt-right, that says everything I need to know about them.
Well, that's not true, Bill. You've been reading the Democratic talking points.
No, I'm not reading no Democratic talking points. I was in the government for 25 years. You talked about H. Bush. I was the person when H. Bush nominated Clarence Thomas to the bench. I was the first person to interview him after Anita Hill came out with her allegations.
I went to school with Anita Hill.
Okay.
She got her butt off.
I was that FBI agent that was in there with Biden doing the hearings and everything. So no, I'm not talking about what I read. I'm talking about things that I know. Donald Trump, I mean, so you're telling me that it's this plan 2025. This is something that you support.
I'm intimately involved with that. And
but you support it. I'm saying you support.
Not every issue. I would say I support a greater majority, 80% of their policy prescription. These are just recommendations, Bill. Come on, you've been in this town long enough. You take a series of recommendations. Some folks will agree with you, others won't. And every president since Reagan has taken the Heritage Foundation recommendation, utilized some of them, threw away others. And this is no different. So I'm very intimately involved with Project 2025 and the media and these liberal, and that's what I've been criticizing Heritage as recently as this morning when I was there. They have allowed these radical leftist liberals to throw this race card, and conservative whites are like deer in headlights. As soon as you throw up the race card, they put their head in the sand. And I've been on them for decades. Stop it. If you know you're not guilty, stand up, fight back like a Nancy Pelosi. If I have to go to war, I want Nancy Pelosi in the foxhole with me. She's a beast. I disagree with everything she says politically, but she is a fighter. Conservatives need to find some backbone and some balls. And so Project 2025, and now I'm willing to come back, Gary, on another show, and we can focus strictly on Project 2025.
We will do that. We will do that. We will do that. Let me get the
so the last thing. I'm not going to
go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
Because I got my other brothers here. So final thought. So you do not think Donald Trump is a racist?
Show me the evidence of it.
I didn't ask you that. Do you think Donald Trump is a racist?
No, it's not what I think, is what I can prove. And the answer to that question, there is no evidence in Trump's background that he is a racist. Zero.
Okay.
All right. Oh, we're coming back. We're coming back to do a 2025 show, Project 2025 show. Mr. Financial Analyst, Carlos, what say you?
All right, Mr. Raynard. All right. I appreciate
it. Well, this is gang up on me night.
Hey, man, you said you got it. You can scrap.
I take my hat off to you for coming on.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say, Mr. Raynard, hey, everybody's got their views. I do tend to agree with Jackie that Mr. Trump is a man of convenience, okay? He's going to do what's best for Trump from what I've seen. Does that make him a good guy? Does that make him a bad guy? You have to make that determination, okay? I think he's one of the greatest leaders in the history of the world. Does that mean he's a good leader? Darth Vader was a great leader. That's a fictional character, but I'm just saying he is a great leader. He's able to motivate people to do things I've never seen before. He can motivate a man to put a mortgage on his house to support his campaign. He can take Rudy Giuliani, make him his attorney, a man who was greatly admired for the way he handled 9/11 in New York City. And now, to my knowledge, Rudy's basically broke and trying to hang on based on some legal issues involving Trump. So I think Trump's a great leader. I just think the fact is Trump best for everyone? I mean, that's why it's two parties, right? Democrats, Republicans, because everybody's not going to see things the same way. The Republican Party is like one of my favorite comedians, Dave Chappelle, said. He's not for some of you people who don't have money. He's for people like me. And that's sort of the way I see it. I mean, I think Trump's going to do things that's going to favor, big business. I think he's going to do things that's going to favor real estate. I think he's going to do things that's going to help, maybe create more tax revenue through real estate, which will also help him since he's into real estate. I do think he is a man of convenience for himself. As far as the respect issue, I do think Donald Trump is Donald Trump. Again, what Jackie said. I mean, I think he is, that's it. That's his MO. I mean, he's a New Yorker, and I have plenty of family in New York, and they're not mean or nasty. They're actually some of the coolest people I've ever met in my life. And I think that Trump takes his New York roots maybe the wrong way and uses it to his advantage as far as being aggressive. And people say, oh, he's from New York. Well, it doesn't make a difference where you're from. I think that Mr. Trump is rude in a lot of the things he does and says, and that's just the way he is. I don't think he's going to change. It's definitely too late at what he's 78 now. He's not going to change or go back to being a Democrat. It's just the way he is. For the NABJ, were they prepared? No, they could have done a better job. Should they be aggressive with a presidential candidate that they may never get a chance to interview again? I studied journalism in school. Yeah, I probably would say some things because I'm probably never going to get the opportunity to interview a presidential candidate in a heightened presidential state as we are in now. So I probably would have done the same thing. Again, a lot of the things Jackie said about the preparation, having a male moderator, someone with more experience on the panel would have definitely made a difference. Okay. So that could have went either way for the Democrats or Republicans. So based on all these things that I've thrown out there about analysis and what Trump's probably going to do that's going to favor Trump, and from a financial perspective, he's going to do things that help real estate and big business and save taxes for the people, for these big companies, is two things. So I understand those perspectives. So in other words, maybe you're understanding where I'm coming from. I'm understanding that perspective from people who are in those categories. What I'm not understanding is what he's necessarily going to do for the people in my community, what he's necessarily going to do. I might be in a certain tax bracket, but a lot of the people I grew up with or knew or still know aren't in a certain tax bracket. How is he going to help them? I know he's going to help the businesses. I know he's going to help real estate. What is he going to do for those people? And then the final two things I have before I turn it over to you for response and also CJ is, do we give him a pass, which I don't think anybody should ever get a pass because people are going to say what they're going to say about January 6th forever. I believe he did instigate it. He's a fantastic leader. I believe he motivated those people to attack the Capitol, which is something that in my community, if a bunch of young men attack a 7-Eleven, they may get put away for life. So I don't give him a pass on that. I don't forgive him for January 6th. And I still have a friend of mine who was in that building that day trying to fight for his life and protect people as a member of the Metropolitan Police Department. So, he doesn't get a pass on that. He can never live that down. And I also don't give him a pass, on being a convicted felon. There are people in our community who are convicted felons. Do they get a right to run for president? Heck, they might not get a chance to vote. So
you want to change the Constitution then? Because Trump qualifies to run for president based on the Constitution.
No, I don't want to change the Constitution, but I want us to represent. One of the things we have to do, I know in the communities I'm from, I'm not sure, again, you gave us a little background about where you're from, but where we come from, we represent the right way. And a convicted felon is not representation of the people I want to be associated with when it comes to making decisions in my life. So obviously he's not getting my vote, okay? But if that's the type of people you want to be associated with and the Republican Party want to be associated with, a convicted felon who incited January 6th, and there's still police officers who are dying from injuries from that day, that's a decision you have to make. Now, again, I'm trying to say everything I say about the Democrats and Republicans in good faith and with much respect as possible. And I never thought I said this, but I'm going to quote the second George Bush, George W. He said, "You guys didn't like me, but now that Trump's in office, you probably miss me." Okay. So I'm going to let you take it from there, boss. I'm going to let you take it from there, Mr. Jackson. That's what I got.
That sounds like him. You do a lot. Let me put it. What will Trump do for regular black folks? I'm just astonished, and I'm working on a column that probably I'll put out in September. Isn't it amazing that we have more black elected officials today than at any point in this country's history? And you can't show me one jurisdiction where there's a black elected official where black folks are doing okay. Name Baltimore, going to hell in a hand. St. Louis, my hometown. New York City, Los Angeles, Oakland. Well, no, Oakland got an Asian. San Francisco, and it goes on. Isn't it amazing that all of these black mayors, specifically, and of course, Wes Bell, the only black governor right now, isn't it amazing that these black mayors claim they don't have money for programs for black folks who are residents and citizens, but yet all these daggone illegals come through, and in New York, they're putting them up in $500 a night hotel. I'm in New York all the time, stay in Manhattan at Hilton there. I can afford to stay at a $500 a night hotel. I don't, but yet a daggone illegal. And then in New York last year, no, 2 years ago, Cuomo, if you were in the New York State illegally, he gave everyone $15,000 one-time cash payment. Now, show me a citizen of New York who got a $15,000 cash payment. Here, when these illegals cross the border, their kids get a PlayStation, they get private tutors for school, and in New York specifically, they're kicking black kids off the baseball diamond so that they can build short-term housing there. So now all of a sudden, your nieces and nephews don't have a rec center to play in because it's illegal. So Trump wants to put a stop to that, number one. But it's amazing that these black mayors are doing more to help illegals than they are American citizens. Then number two, isn't it amazing that Kamala Harris was asked 2.5 years ago on TV, what are you going to do specifically for black folks? She did the sister girl thing and the turkey neck and said, if you ask me what I'm going to do for black, I ain't going to do nothing. And she's delivered on that. But yet she would never go to the homosexual community without specific legislation and without a specific funded program that she's promoting. Same thing with the Hispanic community. Same thing with illegal. It's only the black community that a black person would go into, and Obama did this as well. Go down there and won't offer any type of substantive program or policy. Donald Trump did, and these HBCU presidents are full of crap. He did more for these HBCUs, and I was involved in setting that up. So I know behind the scenes what went on. And then for all these HBCU presidents to feign madness and call Trump a racist, it just blows my mind. California, you're passing all these minimum wage tax or livable wages. See what they did in California in January. They raised minimum wage up, livable wage to, I think, $20 an hour. Guess what? All the fast food joints start closing down. Guess what? So now you got higher unemployment in California. So these policies, Trump either will reverse or will put in policies that's going to, this environmental green bullcrap. They're spending $2-3 trillion talking about the corporations going to black communities and deliberately put toxins and all that. Are you really crazy? And so all these policies are coming through black elected officials who are throwing black folks under the bus. Final thing I'll say, and then I'll let CJ get in or Carlos. Isn't it amazing? Me growing up in St. Louis, I grew up with Lacey Clay, whose father, Bill Clay, was the congressman. He was in the Clay family for over 50 years. Isn't it amazing to this day, the Congressional Black Caucus is the largest voting bloc in Congress. It has been for decades. They can get any concession they want if they voted as a bloc. Similarly, in the United Nations, Africa has the largest voting bloc in the United Nations. They can stop anything from happening until they get what they want if they voted as a bloc. So this whole notion about racism is crazy. Black folks are too busy pushing a white man's agenda, a white liberal man's agenda, is homosexuality. NABJ Jackie, I was so pissed at Ken further marginalizing the black male. That was the tragedy behind what Ken did at NABJ by not having a black on stage. He didn't even realize what he had done. I would have more respect for him if he just did it consciously and did it on purpose. He did not even realize that he just neutered black men again and didn't even realize it. So this whole notion about Trump being a boogeyman and Trump not supporting legislation that would benefit blacks, I don't know how the heck you can support amnesty for illegals if your concern is low skilled and unskilled black folks. You can't have it both ways. If you support amnesty and all these benefits for illegals, you don't give a darn about low income black folks, period.
All right, Raynard. You know what? When you and I talked, you said you were ready. And so you have a forum, and now it's CJ's turn because we're getting all the issues and perspectives out there. Go ahead, CJ.
Hey, hey everybody. So, I had a lot to chew on. I have some notes, but just for clarification, I was listening to your last answer about what Trump would do for, black people, low income people. I didn't really hear much of an answer behind lower the minimum wage. You said the minimum wage right to work laws were a negative thing, and you would like Trump would undo those. So lowering people's wages and further deregulating corporations, is that am I correct in the gist of those are the positive things you would lay out that Trump would do for the black community?
Well, will you, CJ, will you concede that number one, minimum wage was not meant for you to provide for? Minimum wage was set up for high school kids to get that entry level job and to learn responsibility and how to show up on time, etc. So this whole notion of you raising a family off minimum wage, how about you get married first and then have kids? Nobody wants to say that in polite company. The last person that did it got beat up, Bill Cosby. So a lot of it's not the role of the government to bail you out when you make bad choices. And so and guess what, CJ? When you raise minimum wage, I saw a report last week that government regulation, meaning you got to have one or two or a whole plethora of staffers just to fill out paperwork to make sure you're in compliance with local, state, and federal regulations. It costs a business over $5,000 per employee just in compliance. Now, if you can get rid of that, if you're an entrepreneur, you can't afford to absorb that. If you're Coca-Cola or IBM, you don't like it, but you can absorb that. But if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have the money to be able to dedicate one or two staffers just to fill out paperwork. So yeah, that would help entrepreneurs that I think you're talking about, CJ.
Sure. Okay. We can come back to that, but I'm just going to try to go and catch up on everything because everybody had a lot of time. So with the conference itself and how that turned out, I agree with a lot of points that everyone made. I agree with Raynard's point that Trump is not the only lying politician who should have real-time fact checking. Like they all do lie. Joe Biden lies a lot, and there's like Trump lies probably egregiously more, so he gets more attention for it. He has that just weird pathological lie for no reason kind of thing going on, but still, they all lie. They all should be fact checked, and he shouldn't be singled out for that. But I think the main takeaway, I think, from a lot of independents from that, and a lot of people like me who aren't team Democrat or Republican either way, is that Trump seemed very weak, that he couldn't take adversarial questions. It seemed like the main takeaway wasn't that, and I agree that the tone of the first question was a little adversarial and things like that, but it made it seem he came off as a crybaby a little bit. It didn't make him come across as someone who slapped them around, I guess was your take and, your takeaway. But I don't think that was the majority takeaway from most people, especially independents. I'm no fan of Kamala Harris, as I get heat on this show for a lot, and the Democratic Party. But at the same time, I haven't seen the Republican Party offer any substantive policy solutions that are any better. And one of the great examples is immigration. You and Bill kind of touched upon that earlier. And you are right. Those kids in cages pictures were taken during the Obama administration. But that's kind of my point, because the whole fear mongering right now with the Republican Party is immigration, right? We talked about it. The illegal immigrants
illegal immigration, not immigration. Most Americans don't have a problem with illegal immigration. It's the illegal immigration that we have a problem with.
Well, even with the illegal immigration, yeah, which is a problem. Obama was called the deporter in chief for a reason, and those kids in cages were under his watch. He deported a whole lot of people per capita, more than Trump per capita, and more than he did in total. So to fearmonger and say that the Democrats want open borders is kind of a ridiculous argument when Obama had children in cages.
They've been on record. Kamala Harris is on record as we speak saying she supports open borders and nobody comes across the border is illegal, and she wants citizenship for everyone that crosses the border. That's on the record in her own mouth.
Yeah, I haven't seen any actual Democratic policy that advocates for literal open borders.
What do you think the past 3.5 years have been, CJ?
Again, less people have been deported than under Obama, but I mean, I guess, yeah, and sure. But again, I'm not saying illegal immigration is not an issue, but for it to be the main issue that like illegal people are going to come here and somehow be the new voter base of the Democratic Party.
That's what their game plan is.
But how do these people vote if they're illegal?
Okay, well, and I think it was in Virginia where I live at, we just kicked off almost 7,000 illegals who were on the voting rolls here in Virginia last week. So they are voting because guess what, CJ? I don't fault these illegals. You give them benefits, and guess what? In a lot of states, Minnesota, California, New York, Maryland, you give them a driver's license. That opened up the gateway for you to get any local, state, and federal benefit. They should not be eligible to get a driver's license or any other state-sanctioned ID.
Okay, yeah, and even on the benefits part, I agree with that. Okay, that immigrants shouldn't be prioritized for benefits.
No, illegal. So you're saying immigrant.
Illegal immigrants, whatever, words you want to use there. But I don't see the Republican Party being a big fan of social safety net for American citizens in terms of policies that would help them. So I get that you don't want the illegal people, immigrants to have, the health care getting put up like that. But Donald Trump doesn't seem to be for raising people's wages or giving them health care or giving American citizens those things. So how would you square that?
No, CJ, I disagree with you to this extent. We should not measure the compassion of our government or a president by how much money they spend on government programs. We should measure them by how few people need these programs. We have I don't know if
a lot of people need these programs.
Well, but no, and that's a shame that a lot of folks need. I don't know if you're familiar with the DMV, we call DC, Maryland, Virginia. You have a whole cottage industry then, CJ, that have become upper middle class in Prince George's County, specifically, Gary, where you used to be, where they have a vested interest in not solving problems relative to the Black community because they will put themselves out of a job. So they continue the status quo because that's how they become a part of the boule and live in Prince George's County because they never solve a problem. I was once told, CJ, growing up, that the sign of a great teacher is one who makes himself increasingly unnecessary. The sign of a great policy person is one who can design a program where fewer and fewer people need the program. If you fall on hard times, CJ, I think even all the Republicans agree the government should be there as a safety net, but not for 20 and 30, 40 years.
I don't know if all the Republicans would agree with that based on their, policies and what they say in terms of what they believe. They call, policies like free school lunch for children is a radical left policy now, and paid family leave and things like that. The Republican
let's talk about paid family leave, CJ. Let's talk about that. What I often tell people is just because you come up with a good idea does not mean that's the role of the government. The government should have no doing in forcing corporations or even a government agency to provide paid or unpaid medical leave. No,
Okay,
let me
I get that,
decide
but
on
if
my
that's
own.
not the role of the government, then the role of the government is to tell a woman what she can do with her body, but not what corporations can do and things like that. Is that I'm
Well,
not
rebuttal to that is these same people who say my body, my rights, are the same people who want to tell me that my 5-year-old kid who got a penis, all of a sudden one day he goes to school and say to the principal, "I'm a girl now and I want to have surgery." And if I as a parent, like is going on in the case in Dallas, Texas, as we speak, disagree with my 5-year-old kid who lives with me, the state then comes in and takes the kid away from me and gives him the surgery. Or is that the hands off you talking about?
not necessarily. I mean, that's I'm just trying to be clear on the role of government from the right perspective these days, because sometimes they want the government completely out of the hands of corporations, but they seem to be very want the government involved in social issues, like you were kind of pointing
Okay,
out.
let me ask you this, CJ. Before Roe v. Wade in 72, what were women doing relative to abortion pre 72?
So a
Backroom
lot more
abortion.
dangerous. So would we want to make it more dangerous for
That,
women
there
again?
was some backroom abortion, but for the most part, um, they handle it domestically. And all of us know, being black, come on, if I look, 12-year-old cousin got pregnant, guess what? She was shipped down to Mississippi to live with grandma or uncle or something,
It's true.
had the baby. Somebody would take care of the kid until you graduate high school. You get your diploma on one hand, you get your kid back another. That's what was going on pre 72. So this
So
whole
if we're
notion,
forcing people to have kids, so shouldn't we want to have a social safety net for them if they're going to make them
well,
have
how
the
about
kid
keeping
anyway?
your legs closed then? How about that?
So should the government be involved in that? I mean, I don't know how much
No,
government overreach you want. Should
I'm
they be in
letting
the
that
bedroom
fellas.
making sure the legs are closed? Like I'm just trying to figure out where we're going
Yeah,
here.
well, see, and the thing about it, CJ, is despite what the media portrayal is of what the Supreme Court did 2 years ago in Roe v. Wade, they did not overturn Roe v. Wade. That's and journalists need to be ashamed of themselves for saying it, because that's not all the Supreme Court said is we're going to correct what the Supreme Court did in 72, and we're going to allow every state to make their own law based on what their people want, and they will have a chance to make that voice known at the ballot box. That's all the Supreme Court did.
Yeah, I mean, it just outlaws it in red states, like you said. It's going to be the red states that
No,
outlaw
the
it, which
people
is
speak. I thought we had a democracy here. The people have spoken. In California, abortion rights will never be curtailed, whereas Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia, abortion rights are not going to be liberalized there.
so it just sucks for the people that live in those states.
And move or keep your legs closed.
I mean, that's it. That's the voter outreach you're going for. I'm just but yeah, that leads me, I guess that'll segue into my next point, which is the disaster of Donald Trump's campaign this time around compared to the time when he won, because or even the second time around against Biden, he ran a much better campaign. But this campaign is atrocious. He's picked a horrible vice president. The NAB the conference was another great example. He's kind of flailing since they switched candidates. He's not really you kind of mentioned it before, Raynard. He's really not been able to stay on message because Kamala is an easy attack piece. She doesn't have a lot of appeal. She was very unpopular before she was picked. But Trump is he's really lost his appeal because, as you said, he came in as an outsider, shake things up. That's what people wanted. People don't like the career politicians. But when he was in office, he basically was a raw establishment Republican politician. He cut taxes for the rich. He's very aggressive with the military industrial complex. He's very pro Israel, even more so than genocide Joe Biden. He's more aggressive in terms of eliminating the Palestinian population, which is not a popular stance right now. So, yeah, I'm just curious to see what do you think of his campaign and how he's running it this time around.
Well, no, I totally disagree with you, CJ. On he had a better campaign staff as far as people with commensurate experience and know-how than he did. Trump is his own worst enemy. So it's not the campaign is the problem. if you knew behind the scenes the speeches that have been written for him and put on that teleprompter, Trump will walk out there on stage in front of 20,000 people like, oh, what the hell? I'm not giving this speech. I'm just going to have some fun with you guys. How about that? Let me just talk. And that's where he goes off on these crazy tangents. Now, I don't know if you all saw Trump's speech today in North Carolina. Now, he showed a lot of discipline, not as much as I wanted, but it was a marked improvement for over the past 2 weeks. And so I know for a fact certain that certain people have been in Trump's ear over the past couple of weeks since Harris has been front and center. And basically read him the riot act saying either you're going to put some discipline on yourself or you're going to lose. Which one do you want to do? And so I think going forward, CJ, you're going to see a lot more discipline in Trump, and he's not going to be happy about it. But again, do you want to win or you want to be Trump? But you can't be both.
Wow. You really think he could control himself?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
I think Jackie, good question. But you know why I think he's going to do it, Jackie? His ego. Inside of his head, he's like, ain't no way I'm gonna lose to this black woman. Ain't no way. So that in and of itself will be the motivation to get him to it. He won't do it for the reason that most of us would do it if we were in that situation. I think his ego is going to say, you want to be a two-time loser? Oh, and the last time you got beat by a black female radical liberal from San Francisco.
Hey, Raynard, hold on, Raynard. If he's not a racist, why should that matter?
It's ego. Yeah. Ego is not, most people with an ego are not rational on all things. So it's ego. So again, you can be irrational and not be a racist. You can say racist things and not be a racist. Because to me, if I rob a bank today, that doesn't make me a bank robber. That means I robbed the bank. Now, if I rob a series of banks, then I'm a bank robber.
Raynard,
that doesn't even begin to make sense.
No, one thing I'll say to you is you are a bona fide true Republican. Only a Republican can come up.
I second that.
Only a Republican can come up with some BS like
that. All right. Can I jump in real quick? I just have one question.
One thing I'm going to say to you is there's an old saying, you can't tell anybody anything that knows everything. Donald Trump is not controllable. He has never been disciplined from the time he was born. He was not disciplined as a child. He was not disciplined as a young man. And so now you think that you all are going to rein him in? The guy is totally unhinged. Well,
Bill, I slightly disagree. Some of it, but remember, he went to a military high school. That's the definition.
I don't know that because he went to the high school and took his transcripts and took them out of the high school and sealed them somewhere. So nobody knows.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Bill, I mean, that's public.
Have you ever seen his public transcripts? Have you ever seen his transcripts?
You haven't seen mine either.
Well, you saw Obama's. You saw Bill Clinton's. You've seen all the other presidents. I'll say this in closing. As you said to me earlier, you said you've been on this earth a long time, and I have. And I was a history teacher before I became an FBI agent. And so I know about presidents. And I just have to say, you go back and you look through history, Abraham Lincoln, you look at McKinley, Roosevelt, Nixon, Eisenhower, George W. Bush, George H. Bush. None of them have ever been a person who is trying to destroy democracy. And when he incited, and I don't care how you can go back to the bank robber if you want to, but I don't care how you try to cut it, he incited that riot on January the 6th. And no other Republican president would have told people to go to the Capitol and tear it down.
Yeah, he didn't say that. No, Bill.
He told
him march to the Capitol peacefully.
And he told, and the bad thing about that is, and what I think is dumb about those people, he said, "I'll meet you there, and I'll be there." Where was he?
Well, he said that. Doing law enforcement, the Secret Service wasn't about to let any president go down there. Period.
Well, all right, tell you what. What do you think his intent was when he told them to go there?
No, Bill. If you're gonna quote unquote, he said march peacefully, peacefully. That's what the media likes to edit out.
Okay, he said march peacefully. They did not march peacefully. They
That's not his
stormed,
fault.
they stormed the Capitol, and afterwards he said they were patriots. And he
Well, that's
says
his
if he
opinion.
he says if he goes back in office, what did he say he's going to do to all of the sentences?
He said he was gonna look at it case by case, and if he felt they had been done wrong, he would pardon them. That's what he said. And I think that's a judicious approach when you look at it case by case.
Raynard, you're a true Republican. I take my hat off to you.
All right, look here, CJ. Here's what I want to do to wrap up. CJ, Carlos, I'm gonna let Jackie have the last word.
No, I'm gonna defer to CJ. Let him get that
Okay.
last word in.
Okay.
Because we'll run overtime if I start.
I really had a question that you mentioned earlier. You said Kamala Harris was a radical leftist or radical left, something on that line. Please explain to me how Kamala or anyone in the corporate controlled Democratic Party has radical left, please.
Number one, she doesn't believe in borders.
That's
Number two,
bullshit, but okay.
oh, really?
You
Look
think
at
that you
again, we
think she
go
doesn't
back
believe
to
in borders?
the
You
Attorney
think that
General.
she just believes that anyone could just come across with no
She
consequences,
said in her
no
own
process for asylum, no
yes,
nothing?
yes. Come on over. We'll take care of you. That's what she and Joe Biden have said in the past 3.5 years. So if you don't believe me, go Google it. It's
No,
all
no
up
one's
there.
been deported in that time.
Oh, very few, very few. And we don't have time to get,
Okay.
but uh, immigration under Mayorkas, they're playing. I have a degree in it. My background is in tax accounting, and you can play with numbers when you're doing people's taxes and fudge here and fudge there. And sometimes you tip across the law, other time you right up there, and that's what they've been doing on their numbers of deportation. And so I won't bore you with all the technical crap that how they account for the numbers, but that's one. Number two, you realize that she locked up more black folks when she was Attorney General of California, almost 2,000 black folks, and she claimed how racist the justice, and she laughed about it. She locked up a mother for her daughter being truant in either
Yeah,
grade school or
I know
high
about
school.
all that, but like I get that.
About
I'm
it.
no fan of Kamala because of those things, but that doesn't answer like what I was going
No,
for
but
though.
so you don't think those are far left principles and policies,
What
really?
locking up kids? How is that a leftist like that's not? Do you know
She
what
did a job. That's what she
yeah, it's
did.
like that's not a left wing thing. The
Oh,
left
okay.
wing
Oh,
is not for a police state and for like anti marijuana legislation. What I don't understand. Maybe our political definitions are mixed up here. I think most of as someone who represents a part of the left, the people on the left want things like healthcare, maybe like livable wages, affordable rent, things like
okay.
that.
Well, how do you define livable wage? Who's the arbiter of what is a livable
And
wage?
enough to pay your rent and like eat food off of one job where you work 40 hours a week.
Okay, again, CJ. So I ask you again, before these folks start making these adult shit, how about I got three ways to get rid of poverty in this country. Three things you do, and I can almost with metaphysical certitude guarantee you won't be poor. Graduate high school, get a job, get married, and then start having
What
kids.
type of job? You get a job. If that job pays minimum wage, the wage that you and Donald Trump would like for people, then they're going to be in the same place. They're going to need a
Okay,
social safety
so
net that Donald Trump and the Republican Party is
well,
against.
not
And then
no
we're
no
in the
not if
place that
you're
we are
not
now where
not
we're
if you're not out here
subsidizing
having all
Walmart
these
for
babies and then
poverty
trying to
wages.
these women. So no, you got to get a marketable skill, CJ. Whether and I don't mean college. I mean being a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, whatever. You got to have a marketable skill. Sales. You know, you can make a decent living sales at the local Macy's or whatever. You can make
Again,
it
but how I just don't understand how like a living wage is a radical left policy. Is that what I understand?
because it is not the role of the government to tell the marketplace what you're worth as a plumber or electrician or an accountant.
So I'm saying the solution is to have a large portion of the country with no health care and no livable wage. And that's the solution we're going with?
No, why would you need a livable wage if you're not acting irresponsible as an adult? So you wait till you're married to have kids. You wait till you financially can afford to have kids, and
So you're
then
saying
you
the
have
people
kids.
struggling financially, it's all from personal decisions and not from systematic
Oh,
issues
without
like
question.
corporate
Oh, without
greed.
question. Other than unless you're telling me someone was raped or something like that, yeah, you made bad choices.
So, 50% of the country makes like $30,000 or less. So those people have just made
And
bad
most of them
choices.
are single parents, and that's their issue.
So most of the country, you're just saying, should just be fucked because they have
That's
made
how they
bad
had.
decisions.
That's how they got the kids. So
All
All
right,
right.
hold
Well, good
up.
luck in the election.
All right, Raynard,
Wow.
let me tell you, brother. You came on, you delivered. You told me, you said, hey, I ain't scared. Come on in. We have to come back and have you on another time and maybe do a dedicated show on this Project 2025 and some other things. I want to wrap up the show. Give Jackie, you got any final words?
I think it would help if next time we have some live fact checking while we're talking.
oh heck,
I was thinking that. I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
I
Jackie,
was
I thought you
thinking.
were my buddy.
I'm telling the bank robber got me.
So you get a buy. You do it once, you're not a bank robber, but if you do it twice, you are. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh wow,
that
that's
got
I
me.
want to
funny.
hear that. I want to hear that defense in a courtroom.
Jackie, I love you anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it.
All right.
Raynard, I
Right?
got one last question for you. What do you think Donald Trump is going to do? How do you think Donald Trump is going to do in a debate against Kamala Harris?
Oh,
Oof.
he's gonna blow her away, blow her away. You know what? It's interesting, Bill. The Democrats thought they set Trump up on June 22nd at the debate where Biden did so poorly by saying we're going to turn down the mic. That forced discipline onto Trump. That was the worst thing they should have done. If they leave those mics on and you push his button, who knows what he's going to say. But when they turn the mics off like that, that forced Trump to have some discipline. And all Trump did was stood up there. And when he saw how Biden was responding, he's like, let me keep my mouth shut. And I was stunned that Trump was able to show that level of discipline. And so a lot of times, in this case, the Democrats thought they had set a trap for Trump and end up getting snared in their own trap.
You
Well, we
know,
definitely.
I agree totally 100% with you. But I'm going to tell you one thing that's going to be the difference in the debate against Kamala Harris. I noticed during the debate against Biden, they asked Trump about immigration. Trump didn't want to talk about it. So he talked about something completely different. And I was totally surprised because I have the utmost respect for Jake Tapper as a reporter. He reminds me of one of the old reporters, Dan Rather. But Trump did not want to talk about immigration. So he went to the bank robber thing like you did. Well, what happened was then Jake Tapper said to Biden, do you have a response to that? The difference in this one is going to be in look out for it. If Trump is asked about immigration, if he's asked about taxation, if he's asked about anything and he does not answer the question, and they go back to Kamala, rest assured, Kamala is going to say, I will answer the question once he answers the question that was asked. He's not going to be able to play the deflect game in a debate against Kamala Harris. She's a seasoned attorney, and she knows that game. So I don't think he's going to be able to control himself.
If that happens, Bill, then I agree with you. I put it to you this way. As I've been telling a lot of reporters that I've interacted with, the Democrats can't win in November, but Trump can lose. That's the way I sum up November. If Trump can show discipline and stay on the issue, there is nothing on policy and substance the Democrats can do to win in November. After all the economy, the border, and all this stuff, again, the Democrats can't win, but Trump can lose.
You'll
Let,
lose because
yeah,
he's
let,
always
let me let
control.
me jump in because we're gonna close out the show. Um, I don't think he has that kind of discipline, Raynard, but
No.
that debate would be must-see TV. I
Yeah, no
wouldn't be
question.
surprised if it's the most watched debate in our lifetime. But I thank you for coming on the show. You have an open invitation to come back. This is the first time into our home, so you know you were treated like a first-time visitor. Second time, bro?
I'm Jackie. What's it out for you, Jackie? I'm looking for you.
Hey, Gary, one of the things I would like when he comes back on, CJ is the young one on the show. Carlos and I beat up on him. CJ came on one night and he did a breakdown, which really opened our eyes. The minimum wage since 1970 up until today is only increased by what, CJ? $2?
Yeah, something ridiculous, but like just not even just the wage itself, but it's not just the wages, but it's how they've kept up with the corporate profits and inflation. Yes. It's not, that's what's missing in terms of, it's not just people making bad decisions on why they're struggling in the economy. The companies are doing better than they ever have. They actually can afford regulation. They can afford to do healthcare, even though I don't think it should be the companies giving healthcare. It should be just it's another argument. But at the same time, like, it's not that the companies are hurting so bad for profits that they can't afford to pay a living wage. They're doing better than they ever have. Worker productivity is higher than it's ever been. Companies are doing great, but workers are still struggling. The productivity of the wages is not kept up over the years, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So it's an unsustainable thing. And it's not just people making bad decisions or being lazy, or it's not just grown people wanting to work at McDonald's for the heck of it because it's a great job. It's people struggling because the economy is built for them to struggle.
All right, look, that's the last word for now. Raynard, you coming back, brother.
Hey, I appreciate you all listen, guys, I've enjoyed it. And what I like about this is we can disagree without throwing food at each other. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
That's what I told you. This ain't one of those gotcha shows. You're going to have a chance to make your case. And that's why we call this show The Thought Brothers, with these three different perspectives. And we got guests like Jackie. So for The Thought Brothers, I'm Gary Johnson, and we are out of here. Stay with us for a second there, Raynard.
Take care, folks.
Good night.
All right. Night all.
Because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news, and no pictures of Harry armed women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Keys, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised.